Hello and welcome to Talk Story to Me. Today we're going to be talking about Taran Matharu's Summoner Novice. This is his first officially published novel, first in a series published by Penguin, and just to be upfront, in case you don't want to listen to the entire review, it's a well done fantasy epic. Highly recommend it. It's perfect for just some light reading. Only took me a couple hours to read, but I actually had the privilege of live tweeting reading this book. You can check it out under #SummonerBooks. Quite a fun book to read all in all. And of course, it's one of my favorite genres. And before I get into this a little bit more, what I would like to discuss are some of my biases in history with this book. I think it's important to disclose. I do know Taran through Wattpad, though I actually started reading Summoner before I knew him, and he asked me if I would be willing to review this advanced reader's edition. I did receive the book for free in exchange for a fair review, which is what this is. And in terms of my biases, well, the funny thing is I almost didn't read this book when I first saw it on Wattpad. And that's because everyone kept telling me, oh, you've got to read it. It's like Summoner is like Eragon meets Pokemon. Now, Pokemon was huge when I was a teen. Didn't really get into it. It wasn't really something I could afford, which I know sounds kind of sad, but I was familiar with it. Eragon, however, I was actually pretty excited about that. It was supposed to be this high fantasy epic written by a teenager, and I had been writing for years. You know, basically I started, as soon as I could start writing, I was writing stories. And I was so encouraged that this teenager had gotten his novel published. And I read it, and I was very disappointed. It, in my opinion, was highly derivative and mediocre at best. Doesn't mean you can't enjoy it, but it was lacking in a lot of ways for me. So because of that, I almost skipped Summoner Novice because I thought, what could go wrong with a story like Eragon? The story, what else? And I'm very grateful that I didn't, because everything that Eragon got wrong, in my opinion, Summoner got right. Now, Summoner also gets right the things that Eragon got right. So if you liked Eragon, definitely read this book. And if you didn't like Eragon because you thought the characters were lacking, the plot was predictable, and it was unengaging, still read this, particularly if you like high fantasy epics. So let's get into this book. First of all, it's a story of an orphan. Now, don't walk away. I know some people have told me I'm so tired of these, tropes, and I'm tired of orphans, but this is actually one of the things that I really like with Summoner. It uses a number of familiar fantasy tropes. Yes, the orphan with unusual abilities in the medieval town. We've seen it many times, but here it's done quite well. It shows why this particular trope works. Fletcher is a blacksmith's apprentice in this town. He's a young man with a good heart, and he ends up stumbling upon this book that has some information in it, and discovers that he is, in fact, a summoner. Now, summoners are individuals, rare individuals. It's even rarer for a commoner, particularly someone who they have no idea how he has this ability, to be able to bring these demons from out of the ether. Now, side note here, these aren't demons like Satan's minions or fallen angels. These are more like, think Pokemon. There we go. That's where the Pokemon reference comes in. You want to compare them to something that's like having a pet with magical powers, and you use the pet to shoot fireballs and lasers and heal you, all of those things. That's what it is. There's nothing evil or satanic in this book. It's high fantasy that uses certain language that at first, if you're afraid of that type of thing or concerned about it, it's not the same thing at all. So, children, don't go summoning demons. They're not going to be like Ignatius or Shrikes or anything else that you'll read about in this book. Okay, Thor, you need to get down. My apologies. The door is won't shut, and the other door Loki can open. This is actually Thor. Yes, he is quite determined to be in this show. This is actually the 13th time that I've shot the episode, and he keeps showing up. He wants this pencil. Okay, do you want the pencil? Do you want the pencil? Okay, go get the pencil. Go get the pencil. That's a good boy. Go get it. He plays fetch. Anyway, back to Summoner. So he ends up going on this quest to understand his summoning abilities. He ends up at a school, and there are these wars going on right now, most notably between the orcs and the gremlins. Now see, here's one of the things that's distinct in this series. The orcs are not just stupid brutes. They're actually very skilled summoners, and they're posing a serious threat to this world. Also, it's not just pure medieval, if you are expecting that. There's gunpowder is being developed, there are muskets, the technology is advancing. And one of the things that I love that Taran does here is he creates this world. And it has a number of familiar elements, like the primary races so far. We've got humans, we've got orcs, gremlins, elves, and dwarves. Sounds familiar, but the way that he handles them, even with some of the familiar traits, you know, dwarves are obviously, they're short and they're hairy, you know, that's the way it works, and they're very skilled with metalworking. But he gives them this whole culture. In fact, the dwarves are probably my absolute favorite race. I've always have a soft spot, and it has nothing to do with the fact that I'm short and hairy, but point being, it's well done. There's a religious aspect. In fact, he actually digs into that a little bit. I don't want to spoil it. The hardest part with this review is I can't I can't give you any spoilers. So I have decided that after this book is released and after it's barely disclosed, I'll do an episode where I actually get to talk more specifically about the elements I like and why they worked. He also has an interesting fusion of characters. Fletcher as the main character, he's a great fantasy protagonist. In certain respects, he is that everyman. And when Fletcher gets to the school, I wanna say this, but when Fletcher gets to the school, you're gonna see what I'm talking about. It's not that Fletcher is the chosen one or he's the only one with this amazing ability. You can really see yourself in him if you want to see that, or just someone that you would like to be friends with. It's quite different, and I love the fact that there are consequences to Fletcher's actions. He doesn't get a free pass, and sometimes he gets a little bit of help as is needed, but there's definitely more consequences to his actions than in the average young adult fantasy book. Oftentimes the character tends to just be, hey, I'm the chosen one, I'm the main character, don't worry, the rules don't apply to me, and on the story goes. The other characters, I love Captain Lovett. Don't want to spoil anything with her. She's fantastic. Really hoping to see more of her. And my all-time favorite, as great as Fletcher is, I love Othello. It's also one of my favorite Shakespearean tragedies, so I'm quite fond of it for that reason too. And, you know, you just can't go wrong with a name like that. And as I love Ignatius, let's see if I can find this right here. Well, no, because I can't disclose this without it being a spoiler. You just need to read it. Now, in terms of the other characters, something I want to talk about is what we were discussing earlier on the tropes. A lot of times in young adult fantasy or fiction in general, you have easily quantifiable or pigeonholed characters. This character is bad. This character is good. And there isn't much nuance. There are some characters in this book that are very easy to pigeonhole. Some of them are just, they're unlikable. You just, yeah. And there's this one, he's the perfect bureaucratic baddie, and as soon as he walks in, you just, you know he's bad news. And he just starts going after Fletcher, and there was a part of me that was just, he reminds me of, in The Importance of Being Earnest, you know, To lose one parent might be regarded as unfortunate. To lose both looks like carelessness. You know, that type of person. And that works. And the reason that that actually didn't frustrate me and that it doesn't feel like he's taking a pass is because he ends up getting into some very difficult subject matter later, particularly dealing with racism and understanding between friends. So the nuance isn't in some of the characters that look like the primary antagonists. The nuance takes place in the relationship between the friends and the growing friendships. And that's a smart decision. This book is actually listed as being for young adult fiction, starting for ages 12. Now, I'm almost 30 years old, and I thoroughly enjoyed this book. It's one of those young adult books that adults will love too. The discussion on race, the discussion on friendship, and even a little bit on bullying, there's enough nuance in there to get kids thinking and talking that it's important that the other aspects of the story aren't distracting from that. And quite frankly, you know, sometimes it's just refreshing to have someone who... You're the bully, you're the rich snob, and I want to see you just be put back in your place. And the ending. Oh, the ending. It is... Taran did a great job on that. Makes you want to read the second book. There better be a second book. That's all I can say about it. It's a page turner. Didn't find anything boring in it. Some great world building. I can't wait to see what else Taran comes up with for future books. It's going to be great. So, I'm just going to have to do that spoiler episode because there's so many parts that I specifically want to talk about, and I can't. So that's going to have to wait for another episode of Talk Story to Me. Thank you so much for stopping by. We'll be doing this again soon, and I'll see you later. Bye.